In the news tonight, the Prime Minister says a decision to lift subsidies on oil derivatives will halt the debt crisis, but will not affect 70% of Jordanians. At least 20 Syrian security men are killed in what appeared to be a double suicide attack by rebel forces. And David Petraeus resigns his post as CIA chief, admitting an extramarital affair and acknowledging poor judgment. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the News. Here are the details. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said a decision to lift subsidies on oil derivatives will halt the debt crisis. At a meeting with administrative governors and members of executive and consultative committees, Mansour said the decision to introduce a hike on oil prices will not affect 70% of Jordanians. The Prime Minister said the gap between public revenue and expenditure amount to 2 billion dinars, and subsidies on certain commodities and services pushed public debt to more than 15 billion dinars. Furthermore, he said a disruption in Egyptian gas supply and an increasing demand on oil derivatives led to an increase in budget deficit and a decline in Jordan foreign currency reserves. Mansour cautioned that if the kingdom did not receive Arab aid, the economic situation will be even more difficult. The Council of Ministers approved the illicit gains draft law. The law deems as an illicit fortune any movable or immovable asset acquired by any person as a result of exploiting public office or title. The law applies to the Prime Minister and ministers, speakers of the upper and lower houses of Parliament, the central bank governor, mayor of Amman, heads of municipalities, judges, and heads of public, civil, and military departments. The draft law, which cancelled the 2006 Financial Disclosure Law, will be presented to Parliament when it convenes. The Council of Ministers also decided to entrust the Public Security Department, PSD, with monitoring any violations in the use of state-owned vehicles for personal purposes. The Prime Minister instructed Interior Minister Awad Khalifa to follow up on the implementation of the decision. According to the Cabinet decision, the PSD will be the authority to ensure that any public vehicle used outside work hours has acquired the necessary permission. PSD personnel would provide the Prime Ministry with the plate number, the party that issued permission, and the relevant department that operates it. In the ongoing violence in Syria, at least 20 Syrian security men were killed when two explosives-laden cars drove into a military camp in the southern town of Daraa. An opposition watchdog said the explosions appeared to be a double attack by rebel forces. In a conflicting report, state news agency SANA said 3 bombs had gone off in the town near the border with Jordan, killing 7 people in what it described as a series of terrorist attacks. There were no immediate claims of responsibility for the attacks in Daraa. The Syrian media report did not mention a military target. It said 1 bomb had gone off in a busy commercial street, while the second, a car packed with anti-tank mines, which did not all explode, was set off near a government office, damaging it and nearby commercial and residential buildings. In the southern part of Damascus, in Tadamon, a car bomb explosion resulted in 3 injuries. Syrian state television reported the blast and showed footage of blown-out wreckage of 2 cars. The new head of the Syrian National Council, SNC, George Sabra, gave his first news conference in Doha, declaring he will make the unity of the fractured opposition a key policy. Sabra, a Christian veteran activist, was elected yesterday. He takes over a council currently under heavy criticism from international allies for being ineffective in the fight against the Syrian government and for being driven by personal disputes. The SNC started talks today with other Syrian factions, including representatives of rebel groups inside Syria, on forming a new, wider body that will gain international recognition as a government in waiting. Meanwhile, SNC founder Adib Shishakli and 2 other members resigned yesterday, saying the opposition group failed to reform at the Doha meeting. They also said the council has failed to become an institution and did not manage to attract prominent opposition figures. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli tank shells killed at least 4 Palestinians and wounded more than 20 after an attack on an Israeli army patrol along the Israel-Gaza border. Palestinian and local eyewitnesses reported the casualties, saying the toll is one of the highest in a single incident in Gaza in recent months. The identity of the wounded was not immediately known, and the Israeli military did not make any comment on the incident. Gaza hospital officials said several of the Palestinians are thought to be in critical condition. Iraq has cancelled a $4.2 billion weapons deal with Russia over suspected corruption, but the agreement to equip the Iraqi armed forces will be renegotiated. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has launched an investigation into the deal, which, according to media reports, included helicopters and missiles. Corruption allegations surfaced in Russia on Tuesday, when Russian President Vladimir Putin fired his defense minister and began a big military reshuffle. According to a Russian government document issued in October between the Russian and Iraqi prime ministers, Iraq signed contracts to buy weapons from Russia worth over $4 billion. The contracts were signed during visits to Russia by Iraq's acting defense chief in April, July, and August, making Iraq one of Russia's biggest weapons buyers. The Darfur region of Western Sudan is experiencing an outbreak of yellow fever, which has so far killed 67 people. Darfur is the most war-ridden and poverty-stricken area in Sudan. The World Health Organization and Sudanese authorities have declared the disease is now spreading and vaccines are badly needed for disease control. Sudan's Ministry of Health stated that new cases are springing up almost every day and that 4 million units of vaccine are needed to confront the disease. The World Health Organization is taking a series of measures to prevent the spread of yellow fever, including vaccinations and training of local medical staff to handle the disease. Clashes broke out in Turkey's southeastern province of Cizre as thousands of Kurds flocked to the streets to demonstrate in a bid to show solidarity with a widening hunger strike. Riot police used smoke grenade and water cannons to disperse the crowd as protesters pelted armored police vehicles with firecrackers, stones, and petrol bombs. Tensions have been high in the mainly Kurdish southeastern Turkey for some 2 weeks, as hundreds of people, mostly imprisoned in more than 50 jails, have refused food for 60 days now amid increased violence between Turkish soldiers and the Armed Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. The prisoners want the government to allow the leader of the banned PKK, Abdullah Öcalan, imprisoned on an island south of Istanbul, to have access to lawyers after 15 months of no contact. Turkey's Kurds make up around 15 million, almost 1/5 of the population. Now that the U.S. election is over with a sweeping victory for President Barack Obama, the question hanging is who is going to be appointed in the administration and who will fill the key positions. One of the mostly sought-after positions is that of Secretary of State, now held by Hillary Clinton, who will be stepping down in January. Here's more.
After the elections comes the cabinet reshuffle. Now the political guessing game begins about another big Washington question. Who will succeed Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State? Clinton, one of the most popular members of Obama's cabinet, has said she will step down when the current presidential term concludes at the end of January. State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland.
She intends to see through a transition of a successor, and then she will go back to private life and enjoy some rest and think and write and all those things.
The position of Secretary of State is a big prize, and the jockeying for the post is well underway. Potential successors include Democratic Senator John Kerry and Ambassador to the UN Susan Rice. The departure by Clinton will not be the only shakeup in Obama's core team. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner is also reportedly weighing whether the start of Obama's second term in January is the right time to leave. Obama's chief of staff, Jack Lew, is seen as a top choice for the job. While there may be many new faces in some of the key positions, the challenges in the jobs are expected to remain the same.
Another position already vacant is that of the CIA Director David Petraeus, who resigned his post, saying he had engaged in an extramarital affair and acknowledged extremely poor judgment. According to informed U.S. officials, Petraeus had an affair with his biographer Paula Broadwell, a reserve Army officer who wrote a biography of him titled All In. U.S. media says the FBI uncovered evidence of the affair during a separate investigation into Broadwell. She is said to have tried improperly to access his email, possibly seeing classified information. Being an official in a highly sensitive post, Petraeus may have subjected himself to blackmail in the course of the affair.
CIA Director David Petraeus has resigned. In a message to the CIA workforce, he said he was resigning because of an extramarital affair. In a statement, he said, "After being married for over 37 years, I showed extremely poor judgment by engaging in an extramarital affair." U.S. President Barack Obama said in a statement that his thoughts and prayers were with Petraeus and his wife. Obama called Petraeus the most outstanding generals of his generation and expressed confidence that the intelligence agency would continue to thrive. Petraeus took over at the CIA in 2011 after serving as a commander in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Meanwhile, the re-elected U.S. president said he is prepared to compromise with Republicans to avert a looming U.S. fiscal calamity at the end of the year. In his weekly radio address, Obama insisted a tax increase for the rich must be part of any bargain. He reminded Republicans that his approach avoiding steep tax hikes and spending cuts due in January has just won the backing of Americans at the polls. Obama invited congressional leaders to the White House next Friday to discuss the issue as he prepares to start his second term in office.
I'm open to compromise and new ideas, but I refuse to accept any approach that isn't balanced. I will not ask students or seniors or middle-class families to pay down the entire deficit, while people making over $250,000 a year aren't asked to pay a dime more in taxes. This was the central question in the election, and on Tuesday we found out that the majority of Americans agree with my approach: Democrats, independents, and some Republicans.
However, differences remain between Democrats and Republicans on the best way to avoid steep tax hikes and spending cuts. Joe Boehner, the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, repeated his party's commitment not to raise anyone's tax rates as part of a deal to address the crisis. Boehner said tax hikes would eliminate jobs.
Now let's focus on tax reform that closes special interest loopholes and lowers tax rates. Instead of accepting arbitrary that will endanger our national defense, let's get serious about shoring up the entitlement programs that are the primary drivers of our country's massive growing debt. 2013 should be the year to begin to solve our debt through tax reform and entitlement reform. Together, we'll avert the fiscal cliff in a manner that ensures that 2013 finally is that year.
And in the world of style, Rio's 22nd fashion edition came to an end as Brazilian designers showcased their new collections for the next fall and winter season. In the men's show, Les Beaux-Arts Groove presented straight cuts and geometric shapes, a style Brazilians are not used to seeing. Judging by the public's attendance and the amount of media interest, the show was a success as it brought a fresh look. Another hit of the night was the collection by women's label Nietzsche Kessler. The designer invested heavily on light fabrics and shock colors. According to fashion critics, Brazil's fashion industry is going in the right direction. We begin with tennis and the ATP Championship that saw Argentina's Juan Martín del Potro cruise to semi-finals after his surprise victory over defending champion Roger Federer. Del Potro's 7-6, 4-6, 6-3 victory ended Federer's 12-match winning run at the season-ending event and guaranteed he will qualify from Group B along with a 2-1 record. Also sealed a semi-final spot after winning his opening 2 round-robin matches at the season-ending tournament. In the Spanish MotoGP, Dani Pedrosa broke the Valencia circuit record on his way to pole position for the season-ending race. The Honda rider scorched round in 1 minute 30.8 seconds in the final minutes of a dry qualifying session. Fellow Spaniard Jorge Lorenzo was second fastest, with Honda's Australian Casey Stoner third, ahead of his last race before retirement. And the 2012-2013 Vendée Globe single-handed round-the-world yacht race kicked off the French port of Les Sables d'Olonne. 20 sailors from France, Great Britain, Switzerland, Spain and Poland are competing in the race. The course will take the sailors down the Atlantic Ocean and around the Cape of Good Hope on the southern tip of Africa. They then head into the grueling Southern Ocean, travel around Cape Horn before sailing up the Atlantic for their return to Les Sables d'Olonne. The race is expected to last approximately 3 months. And finally, a look at the weather forecast. It continues to be relatively cold and partly cloudy tonight, with a chance for rain in the northern region, accompanied by thunder. The same conditions continue tomorrow, with a further drop in temperature expected to affect the kingdom, bringing rain to the northern and central regions. Winds will be southwesterly to westerly brisk, blowing dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect moderate weather tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. The weatherman warns of flash floods in low-lying areas as well as of poor visibility due to fog. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The Prime Minister says a decision to lift subsidies on oil derivatives will halt the debt crisis, but will not affect 70% of Jordanians. At least 20 Syrian security men are killed in Daraa in what appears to be a double suicide attack by rebel forces, and a car bomb explodes in southern Damascus, injuring 3 people. And David Petraeus resigns his post as CIA chief, admitting an extramarital affair and acknowledging poor judgment that may have jeopardized CIA classified information. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.